Joining us, staff writer for The New Yorker, Susan Glasser, Yale Law School professor and president of the Budget Lab at Yale, Natasha Sarin, Hofstra University law professor James Sample, in a jar, who focuses on constitutional law and democracy, and senior writer at The Dispatch and MS Now contributor David Drucker. Guys, Fish is playing at the Garden tonight, so you're going to be stuck with a lot of random references. There's no Jake Sherman here to play along, so I apologize. You will all just have to grin and bear it. Let's talk about the issue at hand, get down to the nitty-gritty, if you will. Lots of tariffs imposed last night. What's going on? What's the strategy? What's happening? Who are they being imposed on? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, the new tariffs are essentially a replacement for the tariffs that were set to expire today, absent congressional authorization. They're tariffs on 60 economies, 59 countries in the European Union, that set the effective tariff rate on those countries at between 10 to 12.5%. And as you were teasing, you might be asking, the Supreme Court ruled in February that basically, essentially, these tariffs were unlawful and that the president didn't have the authority to impose them. So how are we now in a situation where, sure, he could do so temporarily under Section 122 of the Trade Act, but that was for 150 days. We reached that expiration. So now what? And it turns out that what the administration is doing is they're patching together with a host of authorities the capacity to, in a temporary way, in a limited way, basically reconstruct their trade agenda, and betting on the fact that it's going to take the courts time to catch up in order to declare a lot of these actions unlawful.
So Natasha kind of trampled on your beat here, but did she get it right?
She got it absolutely right. And I would say, look, the administration here, Katie, is actually on firmer ground than it was the first time around, which is to say, to a certain extent, the administration was pushed onto firmer ground by the fact that the Supreme Court ruled as it did in February, which is to say that that statute, the statute that was at issue in February, the IEEPA statute, didn't mention taxes, didn't mention tariffs. So the administration has taken its cue, somewhat to their credit, and it is going through another door that Congress has left arguably open, and that's Section 301. And so here, the challenges that would be brought against these tariffs are more complicated, more nuanced, and more fact-intensive than the legal challenges that were brought against the earlier tariffs, because there is actually at least a plausible, arguable ground here.
So that answers that question. Let me ask the other question to you, Natasha. What does this mean for prices? What does it mean for people like me?
Yeah, effective tariff rates across the board are somewhere like 13% at the moment. That's lower than where they were on Liberation Day last year, but it's still substantially higher than the 2.5% when the second Trump administration began. And what that translates to for the American people is it translates to about $1,100 of increased prices, essentially across the board on everything that they buy, not just imports, domestic products too that are competing with those imports.
$1,100. Yesterday we were talking about how the Iran war is costing the American public about $550 more. Totally. The tariffs cost like $1,200 more. So is that on top of all of that?
That's on. So the tariffs are about $1,200 in addition, or $1,100 to $1,200 at their current levels, plus the fact that gas prices are higher, fertilizer prices are higher. The Iran war is having hundreds of dollars of impact. And you can say, the American people, well, I guess you got a bit of a tax break this year as a result of last year's tax law that increased the average refund for the average family by about $350. But that pales in comparison to now we're talking about something like $2,000 of price increases for a median household.
Yeah, the ratio there does not side in anyone's favor. All right, David, let's get to the harder question here, and this is the question of why. Why do this?
Well, I think you just have to understand how Donald Trump thinks. And if you've tracked his career, not just his political career, but his pre-political career, he doesn't believe in much besides his own infallibility and his ability to make the world as he wishes it to be. But he does believe in tariffs, and he believes in their ability to improve the economy. And no amount of data that we've just been discussing here is going to sway him. And I don't really think it's any more complicated than that. I will add, however, though, that that as an incumbent, right, as somebody in office, he doesn't do a very good job of accepting the fact that the American people aren't happy with things that he is supposed to be dealing with. All right. He's very good as the challenger candidate at pointing out the flaws of the people he's running against. He's particularly good at it. As we saw during COVID, he got tired after a few weeks, Katie, of dealing with all the mitigation factors and said, this is not a big deal. We should just all get back to normal. And what he's trying to do with the economy is say, we should all just get back to normal, and my tariffs are going to improve things. And it's an article of faith with him. And so I don't think you're going to see him pivot from this course.
It may be an article of faith with him, but that article of faith, as you said, is not being pitched or sold successfully to the American public. Look at this Fox News poll. We'll put it up on the screen. Deepening economic pain is the headline from it. 58% say the cost of living is a top economic worry. That's up from 50% in February, so a noticeable change. 51% say finances are worse. Their finances are worse than 2 years ago. And 76%, Susan, disapprove of Donald Trump on the subject of inflation. Those are Fox News numbers.
Yeah, it's pretty striking. I mean, David's points are right as far as Trump's almost, metaphysical belief in the alchemy of tariffs to turn, effectively taxes on American people into gold for American companies. Very, very, just as unproven as alchemy is. To the political question, the thing that's really notable here, I think, is not only are Trump's policies extremely unpopular, not only is he right now at historic low levels of popularity for a president, the dynamic is much worse for him than it was going into the midterm elections in Trump's first term. And even in Trump's first term, he was personally polarizing and unpopular, but a lot of people had the view that this former businessman was somehow going to be good for the economy. And consistently, people would say, well, maybe I don't like him or I'm not sure, but he's been good for the economy. And that helped to float him through what would have otherwise been, even more politically problematic moments of his first presidency. This time, what you have is a situation where, again, he's very unpopular. Something close over 60% of voters in many polls right now are saying they don't approve of his job as president, but even more of them don't approve of the job he's doing on the economy. And so what you're seeing is that Trump, it's not just Democrats or even Republican-leaning independents, even some Republicans are softening on the president on this crucial question of the economy. And Trump is giving them almost nothing. Not only is he raising prices in effect with his policies, he has taken to saying affordability is a made-up hoax. He says the Democrats invented this word and it's not even true. It doesn't mean anything. And, it's not a very good way to get the voters empathy if you're saying basically stop whining.
I get you on that. It's not just, he takes it as an article of faith on inflation or doesn't want to admit that affordability is a problem or is something that Americans have been concerned about for a long time. It's the optics of what he's focused on and what he's doing physically in some spaces as well. Take a look at this video that was taken by Dan Scavino of what the Oval Office looks like now. It's like Louis XVI vomited all over the Oval Office. I mean, I honestly think, the 14th, excuse me. I honestly think Louis XIV would look at this and say, this is too much. There is so much gold in this room that I don't know who he thinks he's impressing by this, because the American public, if they're telling everybody that their top concern is affordability, if they're being asked to pay more for Donald Trump's war, they're being asked to pay more for his article of faith on inflation, on tariffs, et cetera. Everything is going up, and they look at the White House, and this man is obsessed with pasting gold medallions to everything. Optically, I don't understand that. So I'm going to ask that question of why do it? If you say he believes, he just has this faith in tariffs, fine. But then why add to all of that by turning the Oval Office into a gilded mausoleum, and then also telling everybody that affordability is a hoax, David? I don't understand all of it taken together.
Yeah, Katie, you're thinking logically, though. So you have to think illogically. And I mean this. I mean, politicians are famous for thinking illogically, in part because they don't want to accept the fact that they're getting blamed for things that even if it's not their fault, they wanted this job and people expect them to fix this. You know, one of the reasons Donald Trump was reelected in 2024, and Susan sort of alluded to this, was that a lot of voters I talked to in the swing states, you know, recalled his pre-COVID economy and said, look, COVID wasn't his fault. He ran a pretty good shop at the time. I just didn't like the way he talked and behaved, but he sure ran a good shop. Let's have that again. That'll bring down prices. And he doesn't want to accept responsibility. And so that's number one. And so he deflects and dismisses, right? And I think all of the things that he is doing with the Oval Office and the White House grounds and Washington, D.C. and the monuments are all about trying to aggrandize himself and recreate the opulent life that he had at Trump Tower and that he has at Mar-a-Lago, and to honorific himself. I mean, it's just who he is. He's a personalist, and he wants to be feted. And if people won't fed him, he will fed himself.